I'm sharing these things as an example of what can happen when we live a life in alignment based on purpose. These are the outcomes that I've received in my life because I'm stepping into my creator identity. So that's a different energy than achievement identity, which so many of us are locked into. Achievement identity is about push, pressure, and prove. Creator identity is really about alignment, presence. Just a different, it creates a different energy. And so, if we were talking, even 5 years ago, I would be saying, look at these awards. Does that make me worthy? Now I'll share the awards and the things I've been up to, but it isn't about my worthiness because I no longer need to achieve anything to prove my worthiness. I have learned to become the love of my life, and from that place, these things have transpired. So I did enter the Fab Over 40 contest. That's in support of the Cancer Foundation, and I think I made it to the top 10, which was really cool because there's over 100,000 women that entered that. So that was just really cool to be able to advocate and encourage people to vote. There was free votes daily, but people could also pay for votes, and any money raised went to the National Cancer Institute, which obviously is an incredible organization. So that was a really neat experience. I also won the Woman of Inspiration through United Women. So that is women nationally and internationally. So I won the Women of Inspiration category. So that was an incredible experience. I got to go to Toronto and be in the room with other incredible change makers and celebrate. So that was incredibly amazing. And then probably closest to my heart was my Global Lead Impact Award that I won for my work with Nigeria, Africa, in terms of mental health. And, I got a beautiful trophy, but what I was bestowed the honor of was a Nigerian name. Yes, Uguano,
What
which
does
means
that
love.
mean?
It means love. So that was such an incredible honor. I was so humbled to receive that. Yeah, so it's been a big year. I just did actually a keynote talk for the Seroptimists yesterday in celebration of International Women's Day, and my keynote talk was the hidden cost of being fine.
Trina, from my heart to you, congratulations on everything that you've accomplished. I followed along your journey. I'm glad that we got connected. I got to see it. You were in my hometown of Toronto, so I hope Toronto treated you well. If they didn't, let me know and I can find out who didn't, so they can represent exactly who you are. And you raised something that was really impactful to me, was that you had a very celebratory year and you still had your self-worth and value coming from within instead of from external things. And that brought me back to a time where I was chasing awards with relentless ambition. Like everything that I could win, I wanted to win it. If I could win the best walker on the street corner, you better be sure that I was going to win that trophy, Trina. Let me tell you, okay? But then something happened. I stopped winning, even though my behaviors were still successful. That's when I realized I needed to make sure that I was finding my value and worth from within instead of from other things. When you mentioned that you were still valuable and you still had your self worth throughout the years, and this was a bonus, icing on the cake, as they would say, what were some of the ways that you created and maintained your self value and your self worth?
Ways that I created my well-being. Let's see. I think a big part of it was starting to do my own healing. So my first book was From Trauma to Triumph and What Lies Between. So just recognizing the wounds that I still had from my childhood and how those patterns were showing up in my life, and essentially self-sabotaging myself because of those patterns and those wounds. So I think the first part of that journey definitely was my own self-healing. When I stepped into the world of coaching, doing the women's center coaching with Dr. Claire Zamet and taking the certification program, which was a year process, I began to also expand my understanding in terms of what she calls the invisible operating system that holds us all back from fully stepping into that creator identity. And the invisible operating system really has three components. It is the wounds that we still have from our childhood experiences. It is social conditioning, and it is nervous system safety and expansion. So so much of what we experience growing up in our homes, but also what we experience as men and women differently, obviously, and it's social conditioning that tells us how we have to be and how we have to act and what it takes to succeed also creates wounds, and it patterns our nervous system to know what safety feels like. And often between what happened in our families and social conditioning, this what feels safe is actually the patterns that are not helping us evolve in our identity, if that makes sense. So I think it's just been starting to unpack all of that and do the work and understand. There was never really anything wrong with me. It was just beginning to expand and awaken and step into the bigger version of myself. Because for a long time I carried a lot of shame and thought there was something wrong with me. I think a lot of people internalize it the same way. And so when I started to understand these concepts, it really cracked a lot of things open for me. It really is the systems that are holding us back. And I think we know that. I think we're all aware that the systems are crumbling, and they served us for a time, but they're no longer serving us. And a lot of people are awakening, and that's really what I do in my coaching is support women who are in that messy middle stage of I don't want to go back to where I was, but I don't know what this new version of me looks like. And I'm in this really uncomfortable, messy middle. And there's grief there too, because we have to recognize who we were got us to where we are. And that's just, we need to still celebrate that. Uh, but it's also letting go of that. And there can be some grief in that as well. And so just really helping women transform into that bigger version of themselves. So there's a lot there. Hopefully I answered your question.
You did, and you gave me a lot to think about because you said that messy middle. How messy is that middle for women?
It's messy because we feel alone. It's messy because we internalize it as there's something wrong with us. It's messy because we know we don't want to go back, but we can't clearly see the forward either. And it's also three steps forward, two steps back, because it's not linear. So I think for all of those reasons, it feels messy and uncomfortable. And I really, use the analogy. I love analogies. I use the analogy that the caterpillar that goes into the cocoon, it completely liquefies before it transforms into that butterfly. Complete liquid, gooey, mushy liquid before it transforms. And so that's the stage that often I think women get stuck in. And then what happens is their nervous system says, what you're wanting to walk towards feels really scary, unfamiliar, and unknown. And so everything gets activated in our nervous system. And so our nervous system wants to naturally pull us back to what it does know, even though on a logical, conscious level, we know we do not want to go back there. And so it's this really big internal push pull that we experience.
There's a woman that I work with, and I coach her actually, and she was in that messy middle for about, I want to say, a year and a half that I was working with her. Prior to me, she was in the early stages. You know, the early stages. Am I good enough to do this? Oh my God, this is scary. Am I going to be alone? Who am I going to do it with? I just need help. And everyone I ask for help, they just end up using me, abusing me, and leaving me. When she realized that she was in that messy middle, one of the things that she really struggled with was I know I'm good enough for the situation, people, places, or things that maybe I will be leaving, but am I good enough for the people, places, and things I'm going to be striving for? And she had a difficult time celebrating each step forward because there's a little bit of guilt. Why am I able to do this when this other person can't? Who am I to think that I'm going to get that life? When she found a healthy relationship now, she felt even more guilt. She was like, Train, here I am. I'm in love again. I'm over 50. I didn't think I was going to be able to find love. That's for people in their 20s. My other friends who I don't see that often, they're still struggling to find love. Why am I'm able to find love? The people that you work with, specifically the women, do you see them asking themselves and maybe questioning themselves each time they find success? Why are they able to find success and maybe other people can't, especially those close to them?
Yeah, absolutely, Train. So what you named is really important. And that's some of the deeper work we do utilizing the women centered coaching framework. So we may know at a conscious level, yeah, I deserve more. I can do this. I want this. But our conscious level is only 5% of our actual cognition. 95% is subconscious. And that subconscious is based on our biases, our values, our beliefs, our traumas, our social conditioning. And so until we do the deeper work of really digging deep and saying, okay, I hear you consciously, this is what you want, and that's great. But let's dig it deeper into that subconscious and let's really look at the limiting beliefs that you carry about self, about others, and about life. So my limiting belief about myself was I'm unseen. Nobody sees me. My story, my limiting belief about others was people do not show up for me the way I need them to. So I'm just going to do things on my own. And my limiting belief about my life was I really didn't deserve the things I truly desired. And so that's the deeper transformational work that I do with women is help them really name those limiting beliefs. We sit there for a little bit, not long, um, but long enough to say, how old is it was that Trina? And for me, it was 7-year-old Trina that held those beliefs. And so I almost had to go back and hug her and hold her and tell her the things she didn't hear. Right. And when that session that I do that with women is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And that is really the moment I notice, like I'm getting goosebumps now because it's my favorite part, is just where I see the switch. And it's like, okay, so those are our limiting beliefs in that 95% subconscious. Like that's powerful. You can have all the beliefs about yourself in that conscious level, but till we really do the deeper work and bring all of those things in the subconscious to the conscious, that's where transformation happens. So it's not just naming the story, it's also then noticing without judgment, that's the hardest part, how are those patterns based on those limiting beliefs showing up in your life? So here's an example of how being unseen showed up in my life. And this was just a year ago when I was already doing a lot of this work and it's like, "Oh man, those are sneaky patterns." There it is. I in my relationships with I've got some incredible, incredible girlfriends in my life who are so loving and supportive. But when I really look at how we interact, they do, I'm going to say 80 to 90% of the talking. I do the listening and I'll share a bit, but I'm guarded in what I share or I limit what I share. And the story I would tell myself is, "Oh, I'm just a better listener. I'm just a better listener." It's more important for them to share what's going on for that. But when I really dig deep, the limiting belief really is I'm not seen anyway. It's more important that I hold space to see others. Whew. I am now really aware of that. I even do that in my relationship with my husband. I'm still quite guarded with what I share, but man, I hold the best space to hear him and to validate him and to amplify him and to challenge him. But there's still that little girl and I'm working on it. I'm aware of it, but I am working on this. So that's a pattern I'm trying to work on and change. So we get a lot of things consciously, and that's I think where a lot of coaching frameworks or programs fall short is we work on what's your vision and goals, and now let's work on an action plan and get you there. But until we delve into that subconscious, that 95% where those beliefs and patterns are held, we aren't going to do that deeper transformational work.
So I'm going to use what you just shared as an example for what I've been through. So growing up, without my mother and my father, it was difficult for me to share how I truly felt because I was sharing with my grandmother, and no one really wants to yell at granny, right? So growing up, anytime I was in a situation that was maybe emotionally fueled, let's say I was really happy about something or really upset about something or really sad, like all the spectrums of the emotions, right? Left to right. For the most part, I keep it to myself. And looking back, it was probably because, well, no one's around to hear it. Why share it?
Mhm.
What I found in my relationships now is before I started to do the work earlier on, let's say in my 20s, it was the same thing. I was like, well, I don't really like this situation, but what's the point in sharing it? Because I was so used to people not wanting to hear it because no one's around. But this time there was someone around. That's something I had to work on. So would that, in my situation, be an example of what you're talking about, where that's how it showed up because there wasn't anyone around to hear it? I just grew up not sharing, even though there were people around to hear it.
Right, absolutely, terrain. So that story came from how old when you kind of reflect back? How old do you think you started telling that story of people
Oh,
aren't around to hear my story, anyways?
I was with my grandmother until I was about 5 or 6, so I'm probably looking like from then on, 17, 18, 19, sorry, not 18, probably 8, 9, 10, like the
Mhm.
early stages of teenagehood, right? Like you're still in elementary school at that point.
Yeah. So at 8 or 9 years old, let's just take that age, right? When you're looking around and saying, "People don't really show up for me. There's not really anyone here to tell my story." Dig a little deeper. What do you think's even beneath that? If you have a belief that people don't show up for you, what's the deeper belief you hold about self?
Probably that I don't feel safe with other people.
There, that's the deeper truth. It's not that
Yeah.
they don't show up for you, it's that you don't feel safe. How did that just land for you in your body when you kinda name that?
Well, it landed good because I did the work, right? But I'm looking through the mindset of maybe before I did it, it would have been like, oof, that's why I had to be the strongest. I had to be the fastest. I had to be the most accomplished because I couldn't be weak, right? Because after that, in my early teens, I was actually bullied.
Sure.
So it went from me not feeling safe the entire time as people not showing up. Now there's people around me. Now I'm be both. So I was constantly reminded that I had to fend for myself. And the only one of the ways that a lot of men probably fend for themselves, or people in general, you have to be strong. And if you look strong, people will tend to leave you alone.
Sure. Also, what you saying there, Train, I'm just gonna try and name it, is that on some level, when you performed and you got the trophies or you got the accolades, that there was some sense of validation in your worth. So you also learned that value, worth was transactional in your accomplishments.
Yes, yeah. So I used to play a lot of sports up until probably about 20. So let's say about 10, 15 years ago. And I did very well. I won gold medals. I played for baseball teams. So up until high school and let's say post secondary, I didn't go pro or anything like that. So I don't want to make it seem like these are broken dreams. But for high school and university, college, I played sports well enough to win. The only time I started to lose, or the only time I didn't win, was when my parents, who weren't around, showed up. Right? Because that was my worst performing game, is just, or race, or whatever the case is. I just couldn't perform well in front of them. So I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Mhm. It's so funny you just said that. I was just reflecting back. My son played quite higher level lacrosse, and my daughter was a competitive dancer. So I hated missing either of theirs, but sometimes they had the same thing scheduled at the same time. So my husband would go in one direction with my son, and I'd go with my daughter. But at times when Stephen and I both couldn't attend Keaton's, he would play the best. Like he scored the most goals, and the parents would be like, "Oh my God, he was on fire!" And I'm like, "What? What is that?"
I think it's a different type of pressure. It's a different type of pressure. Like it sounds like you guys have a really good relationship. So it's just like, okay, my mom and dad are there. Whether you perform really well or perform really bad, you're going to hear about it immediately because you most likely live in the same house.
Mhm.
Versus if your friend, if you perform really well, you can have some separation. Okay, okay, I get it. I'm God's gift to lacrosse, or I'm God's gift to football or basketball, right? And if you play really bad, just don't answer the call. Ignore their text messages, right? When it comes to someone, let's say, for example, my situation or situations in general, then if they're still achieving well, but you use the word validation, but the validation is still external. Do they have difficulties? Would they have difficulties, sorry, celebrating themselves?
Yes. Because, well, yes, I believe so. Again, we live in systems that reward output, performance, achievement. And we've learned within those systems that our value and our worth to be respected, all of those things are tied to that. And again, that's happening within our subconscious for the most part. And so when people achieve from that place, again, it's they're chasing that validation of worth and value. And so when people are coming from more that creator identity of I know who I am, my worth is not tied to output, and I create from a place of alignment, not pressure. And then you do get those, achievements. It's just a different experience. I mean, I've gotten, I've had achievements from achievement identity, and it almost still at that it's like, yeah, this is great, but there was always a but, right? But what's next? Or, does that really actually give me that worth? It's like you're just chasing this elusive metal that doesn't really exist, right? Because everything's external. You're constantly looking out. So when we move into creator identity, it's from inside out. The energy is just different. We're all vibration, energy, and frequency. That is no longer woo-woo science. That has been proven countless times in quantum science now. And we vibrate differently. Our nervous system is not regulated from that place. From push performance, it is a dysregulated nervous system. When we are in creator identity and learn to be the love of our life, and nobody or anything we do can give us our worth, because that is completely inherent, and internal. That comes from a regulated nervous system. It's just a very different experience and very different shift. And I'm really on a mission to change systems, and build leaders that can lead from a place that doesn't require self-abandonment. And so that's the difference. That's the big difference between that achievement identity versus creator identity.
I've seen some women who get that achiever's identity that you spoke about, but from my perspective, it seems it's something that shows up later on in their life, such as, let's say, 40s and onwards, for an example. Right? And I've seen many women who will work they regular work 8 hours. They'll do the 10, the 12, the 14, the 16. They get caught up in achieving and achieving and achieving. And to your point, they're always chasing because they'll say that, well, I need to make six figures. When they get the six figures, I need to make 150,000. 150,000 need to make a million. The goalpost continues to be moved, and one thing that I've noticed from the women that I work with is that you can see the chase impacting their bodies from a health perspective. They ignore it because the chase has all of their focus. What are some of the consequences of the chase on the woman's body if they don't take a moment to stop and listen to their body?
Great question. I think it starts with the emotional impacts, right? We get disconnect. Number one, we get exhausted. Um, in my keynote yesterday, The Hidden Cost of Fine, I talk about, the people I worked with got the best of me, and my family got what was left, right? I wasn't bringing my best self home. I was running on fumes. So that's, I think, where it starts when we're in that constant chase. And we're dysregulated all the time, and a dysregulated nervous system is going to create physical impact. I think it starts then with burnout, and then it moves to potentially mental health issues, and then it also can translate into physical health issues. I think it's manifested differently in women, but it does absolutely impact our emotional and physical well-being. You can't you can't keep functioning at that point and something not break. And I think what I'm seeing is a lot of women are moving from, so there's survival identity, and that's just I'm doing this to survive. That's very much where I was at when I was, coming out after my suicide attempt. I was in survivor identity. And then I transitioned, I went to school, I got my education, and I really transitioned into that performer identity, that push energy, get accolades, and I got to earn respect, and I got to show people I'm competent. But then something shifted probably in my 40s where I moved more into awakening identity. And that's that, okay, I can't keep doing this, right? What I'm doing isn't working for me internally. I'm not showing up in the best version of myself in the places that matter most. And that's my friendships and my family. But it was also, I don't know what actually I was internalizing that as what's wrong with me. I have it all. I have success in a job. I've got a great family. I've got a beautiful home. I've got friends. Why, where's this stirring internally coming from? So I would internalize that as something was wrong, but I now recognize it. I was in the awakening identity. And then this is where we're in that messy middle as women, and not just women. I see some men moving into that awakening identity either. So I don't want to make it just about gender women. Certainly, I think men are moving into that too. I think I see more women in it than men, but we're all shifting into it because we're saying, okay, the systems that the world has been built on aren't working. They're no longer working. And so, but what does that mean? And how do we make those changes? Well, we make those changes by changing our own identity first, and we move into creator, because when we are different internally in our nervous system, that emits outwards. And that's how we can have that positive effect externally. But we first have to do the work internally. But we also can't be ourselves by ourselves. We need to do that with each other and in cooperation and in interconnection. And a big part of that performance identity was do it on your own, figure it out by yourself. Don't ask for help because people are going to think you're weak. So again, there's so much that we need to change and move out of and move into.
If you can, Trina, you mentioned a couple of identities. You mentioned achiever, you mentioned creator, you mentioned awakening identities. Can you take us through the different identities and how we shift through them?
Sure. So survival identity is the first one. This is the model I'm actually just creating. So this is the first time I'm actually publicly speaking about it. So this is exciting. So survival identity is just that we are just living to survive. So in my book, From Trauma to Triumph and What Lies Between, I really talk about a very pivotal points in my own life being right after my suicide attempt. So at the age of 16, I had a very serious suicide attempt. And so before that, and certainly for probably a good year, year and a half after that, I think I was really in that survival identity. I am just doing what I need to do to get myself out of bed and put one foot in front of the other and just literally survive. Then I went to school, post-secondary education in my life, and I was on my healing journey, and I was starting to do some of my healing work. I was connected to an incredible psychologist, and I was openly talking about my suicide. I'd actually go in and speak to grade seveners during their health class to talk about suicide and warning signs to watch, but also if somebody was experiencing suicidal ideation, to reach out and talk to someone. And so I think I really started to move into my performance identity once I went to post secondary. I started with the child and youth care program. I was passionate. I was excited about being able to support other children and youth where I was in my adolescence. I was doing really well academically for the first time in my life because school academics growing up was not easy for me. And so I really moved into this performance identity of, wow, when I get good marks, look at the positive accolades I get from my instructors and from my parents. And ooh, I like this, right? And so it built some self-confidence and some self-esteem that I was really lacking. And I really spent, I think, most of my 30 years in human services in that performance identity, right? And because that's the systems that I had to work within. We're all within those systems that reward quietly over and over again the same types of things: more competency, more availability, more performance. That's what those systems are built on. And so you just learn to be successful in those systems. And I was. And I built a great reputation as a social worker, and I made incredible impact. I have, I'm very happy and proud of that. And it gave me a lot. Those systems gave me those things. But then there was just this point, and it really was around just before COVID. I lost my job where I was with the Central Alberta FAC network. I'd been there for 8 years. I'd done some incredible work. I'd lost my job. COVID was starting to happen, and just something inside of me is just like, I can't keep doing this. Like, something has to give. Like, I'm exhausted. Like, on paper, I look like success, but in my body, it doesn't feel like success. And so that was kind of the turning point where I started to question. And when they're starting to be questioning, that's when typically people are moving from that performance identity into awakening identity. Questioning, not knowing what the answers are, but asking the questions. And then I stepped into creator identity. I was 2024 October, my book launch. I stood on stage in front of family, friends, colleagues, and even some people I didn't know, who bought tickets to attend my book launch. And I stepped out onto that stage, and the achievement identity in me was saying, you know what, just take this as a win. You're checking more boxes. You're an author. You're a speaker. This is great. And I did something really surprising on that stage. I proclaimed myself in front of all those people to be a coach. I had no plan. I had no infrastructure. I had no training. All I had was a deeper knowing that that's what I was truly meant to step into. And so that was my first shift from achievement into creator, going, I don't know how this is going to happen. I am just trusting. I am trusting this is what I'm meant to do. I'm trusting the next step will appear to me, and I'm just trusting it's all going to work out. And you know what? It did. Like, that was a year and a half ago, and where my life is now, stepping fully into creator identity, my life has exploded in the best way, in ways I never thought or imagined possible. And it's just from a different energy. I wake up excited. I'm regulated. I'm not regulated all the time. There is lots of things happening in this world right now, like, holy man. But I can pull myself out of it pretty quickly. And there's moments I flip into achiever identity, right? Like, I get panicky and think, oh my God, I don't have enough clients or that. And I'm like, okay, that's achievement identity, Trina. Step out of that into creator. And so hopefully that helps you explain what each of those different identities look like. Oh, you're muted, I think.
It did, and it allows me to apply to myself because now 2025, I made a promise to myself, and the promise was, Terrain, you're going to be self-soothing and self-fulfilling.
Mhm.
And at the time I made that promise to myself, I'm gonna be honest with you, Trina, I was like, Terrain, what the hell are you telling yourself? These are things you tell other people. But then I just took a couple steps back, and I was like, when I get other people to say it, what are the next steps? And the next steps, I can't tell them. I have to tell myself. So what I did that day after I said it, I was like, okay, what is it that you're going to do to help you do this? And then I was like, okay, I want to be content with my life. No more big raises, no more bigger houses, no more bigger cars, nothing. That 2026 SUV that you want to get, Terrain, a 2016 car works perfectly fine. You don't need to get bigger and bolder. That house that you currently have that you want to refinance and buy another house just cuz, nope, you're not doing that anymore. You're going to take a moment and you're going to sit. So I sat, Trina. I looked to my left, I looked to my right. I looked up, I was like, please, Lord. I grabbed a book. I started to read. And then I realized, I used to read 1 hour a day for years. And guess what I did, Trina? I started to read 1 hour a day. And as I started to do that, I didn't have time to entertain drama. I didn't have time to entertain chaos. I realized that 24 hours in a day is a lot of time when you're just in that mode. And then I took a step forward, and then I started to do presentations for grief groups. Someone came to me and they asked me to be a president of their charity. I was like, I kind of like this. I was like, wow, that's a big deal. And it's in the States and I'm in Canada. I was like, okay, Trent, how are you going to do this? And then I went back and I was like, you have time now to do this. It's amazing how things have started to use the word, align. I started to fall into more things that I truly loved. And then my passion was center of my universe, and everything else was just supplementing that. I work my job to do what? Fuel my passion. So when you touch on the creator, I can see why it's so rewarding from an internal perspective is because you control 100%. It's not good job terrain because you got this house. Okay, well, without the house, would you still celebrate me? Well, maybe not. What have you done? But I don't need that anymore. That journey to realize that you don't need that external validation, that external celebration. How difficult is that journey for some people to walk?
Well, I think it's different. I think it's difficult for everybody. I don't think it's easy for anybody. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it. Right? um, and I think it's difficult for what I named earlier is that so much of what holds us back is in the 95% of our subconscious, right? We need to understand the power and the influence that social conditioning has had on us as males and females, and we need to understand how those experiences growing up in our childhood, family dynamics, whatever that looked like. You talked about that was with your grandma, and for others, that can look very different. And then also what that creates in our nervous system, right? I learned in my nervous system, it learned that doing things yourself created safety for myself in my nervous system. My nervous system learned that don't talk about your emotions. That created safety. Be perfect. That created safety. So to start to do the things that we those patterns didn't serve me as an adult, but to start to do things differently then created a dysregulated nervous system. And that's actually what sabotages us, right? When people want to do all of these, have these all of these great goals, it's pretty easy to know, oh yeah, I want to lose weight. Okay, great. Okay, so you're going to eat less calories, you're going to move your body. Like we all know that intellectually, like what we need to do, but why is it so damn hard? Well, it's because of all those the relationship that we have with food, and it's our it's what makes our nervous system feel regulated. Like it's all of that in the 95% subconscious. That's why it's so damn hard. And so I think this is really the power of coaching is it's not therapy. Therapy is kind of past focused. Coaching is future focused, but bringing in the element of understanding the power of all those things that are playing underneath in that subconscious and having someone to help you work through that and bring it to the conscious level makes it less hard. We cannot do this ourselves. I have learned in the last 2 years the power. I will always have a coach. Moving forward, I will always have a coach because my transformation did not happen by myself. It happened in relationship with somebody who amplified me, challenged me, but also created a safe space for me to be regulated in my nervous system, to then be able to talk about the patterns and the limiting beliefs and how these things are showing up, to see when I was having resistance, that that was an opportunity to actually look at some past patterns. Resistance is just evidence that past patterns and limiting beliefs are coming to the forefront. So let's talk about it, right? Let's work our way through it. As a coach, I used to fear resistance. Now I'm like, bring it on. Here's opportunities for some more growth. So that's why it's so hard.
What are some of the ways then we can identify that resistance within ourselves and look to maybe tackle it head on and resolve it?
Well, the first key is what's happening in your body, right? Are you feeling tension? Do you feel tightness in your chest, in your stomach? Are your thoughts racing? That's evidence that you're being activated. And when you're activated, something's happening. Something's coming up for you, whether that's a limiting belief, whether that's somebody violating a boundary, um, right? And that's what we have to start with. It's first we have to learn, what does a regulated nervous system feel like? And I'm going to be honest, Terrain, we are living in a world where people are chronically living in a state of dysregulation. I don't even think lots of people know how to feel or to make space for a regulated nervous system. And a regulated nervous system can even feel stressful to somebody who's not used to being there. And so I think that's the first step, is learning what regulated versus dysregulated feels like in our body and being really in tuned. Part of the achievement identity is learning the negative consequences of that is disconnecting from our body and living from the neck up. And so we can't learn, change, grow, transform when we're living in that state. First and foremost, it's about connecting our head, heart, and body together, and noticing the signals and using that as indication of where we're at.
I think that is so hard because we look at building a community, and sometimes in our desire to build a community, because maybe we didn't have the community that we wanted growing up, we built a toxic one or a healthy one. And you begin to realize, oh my God, are these the people that I'm keeping around myself? Like, I just can't achieve with them. But then you mentioned earlier the fear. We talked about being alone, and if I don't, if I start listening to my body, what if Trina? What if Trina says, "Hey, you need to stop working so hard, and maybe you don't need a $3,000, 3,000 square foot home. Maybe you need a 2,500 or a 2,000. Maybe you need to stop working so hard to get that Ferrari. Maybe you need to drive a Kia. Maybe those social circles that you're striving to be in, maybe right now it's not for you." And these are voices, right? And our body sometimes is that quiet one. My fingers are tingling. Are you listening to me? And then when it yells, your legs don't work anymore because you're so stressed, you're so not regulated, that now it's like, oh my God, it's hit the fan. My body's yelling at me. Now you don't hear the voices of the country club or dinner with whomever having lobster and caviar and all these other things. Right? Um, how can women and men, everyone,
Mm-hmm.
quiet those voices that are distractions? And as you mentioned, it's hard to keep our body regulated and tune in to more what the body is saying.
That's a great question, and I think it might look different for different people. I think we have to know what regulates you, even just for small moments in the day. Like, start with just small moments. And for me, it's being in nature. It's taking a walk without my phone, and it's trying to be present in my body. Again, we are living from the neck up, which means, future focused, often that dysregulation state of adrenaline and cortisol is about, oh my God, what's going to happen? And we're watching the news, and we're being drawn into all of these negative things around us, whether that's at a world level or a personal level. And so just taking a moment to walk away from all of that just for a minute, just again, some deep breathing. Breathing is the number one, like slow, deep breaths, 5 to 10, right? And just notice what shifts for you in your body. Our breath is the number one most powerful way that we can really pull ourselves out of a state of dysregulation. It's a tool, but just like your toothbrush is a tool, your toothbrush does no good if it sits in the toothbrush holder for your oral hygiene. You actually have to use it, um, and use it more than once, right, to make a difference. It's consistency. It's not perfection. It's consistency. And so I think just building those small little moments in your day to do some of those things for yourself and noticing what shifts. That's, I think, where we start.
That's a big one. I like that example, the toothbrush. Because remember as kids, like you had to get your parents would say, brush your teeth after you eat. It's repetition, it's consistency, it's progression. And it's a habit. And we need to build that habit to celebrate ourselves, to heal ourselves, to identify what it is that we're going through. Because one of my former coworkers, he was in the achiever identity for years to the point where when his child was born, he missed it. I got to be at work. I got to finish it. Right. He worked and worked and worked. And unfortunately, when he got sick, that's when he had to make the change. And the interesting thing about that is when I talked to him about it, or when I did back then, is that even though he developed, I think he had became diabetic. Even though he became diabetic, he was happier afterwards than
Mhm,
before. And the reason why he, as he shared, is I'm more balanced, I'm more regulated, and I'm living for my son,
mhm.
which is a big, big thing. You shared some of the struggles that you went through and you had your family support. How impactful was your family being there for you, to you?
Oh, huge. I couldn't imagine going through life without it. I mean, I'm incredibly fortunate because I've always had a very loving and strong family. Not perfect. We've got some history and some baggage, as every family does, but they consistently loved me and supported me, and that was challenged when I, told them I'm writing a book about trauma. That created some tension in my family, but they still showed up for me. We need community, whatever community looks like. That doesn't necessarily have to mean the biological family. I know, again, it looks different for everybody, but we need community. That is a big part of moving into creator. We need each other. We we've just been pitted against each other for so long within the systems, right? It's like, women just as soon step on each other's necks with their stiletto heels, and I'm done with that. I am about cooperation and interconnection and building. Like when I succeed in creator identity, I am lifting up the next woman beside me, because when she succeeds, we all succeed. And a better world for women is a better world for everybody. So again, a big part of that creator identity is recognizing we need each other, and that isn't weakness. To me, that's actually strength. And if unfortunately people maybe have community or systems that are actually kind of pulling them down, and unfortunately that's a part of the messy middle, is looking at, are there systems and supports in my life currently that are actually pulling me back? And sometimes that might mean, letting some of that go, still honoring what you got from them, the system, or sorry, the support or the person, but just maybe recognizing, you know what, they're just in a different season than I am, not better, not worse, just different. And that can be really a hard place to be. And so it's then, I've been really actively looking for women who are in that creator identity so that we can build circles of support, and not to exclude anyone. It's not about that. It's just, again, there's power in finding people who are in the same season as you are. Otherwise we can sometimes get pulled back a little bit into those achievement identity, or places we have worked hard to move forward from.
Trina, let me ask you one final question before I let you go, because I really like what you just shared. So I'm going to give you, if you remember, three wishes. And I want you to wish, you can use these wishes for this one question. What are three things you wish people knew about building communities with each other and why?
I wish people understood and knew the power of community. That's one wish. I wish people understood how much stronger we are, how much healthier we are, and how much more we can achieve collectively in community.